And we are live on air. This is John Reed. Welcome to the Google Hangouts Luke Marson series. Joining me is Luke Marson. What's up, man? Look at you there.
Hey, good, thanks.
And then I've got special guest, first time appearance by Jody Sharma. What's going on? Look at you.
Going well. Thanks, John. Thanks for
having me. Proper Twitter handle with the 20 there.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
Pretty nice. Got that sorted out. There's a bunch of Jyotis on Twitter, so I had to really narrow down, but I think I got the right one. So.
Good detective work.
Yeah, I did a good job. I was feeling good about my social media skills today. So we're actually here to talk about HCM trends in the cloud and specifically SuccessFactors and Employee Central. In case you wondered how these Luke Marson specials happen, it's a pretty complex process. Luke pings me with a good idea, and then we do it. So that's how this all came about. But I did want to mention, many of you are probably curious if we're going to touch on the departure of Vishal Sikka from SAP and also Sean Price, which is a related departure for the HCM crowd. And the answer is yes, but not till the end. So sorry, you're going to have to wait until the very end of the recording to hear that part of it. But we will get to it, I promise. So just stick with us, and we'll get there. But I guess I just really wanted to start by either one of you can kick it off. But I just want to ask you, out in the field right now, what are you seeing with this whole cloud versus on-premise HCM? Is there like a clear trend towards the cloud that you're seeing, or is it really still more of a case-by-case at this point?
I'll start this one. Well, definitely on-premise is beginning a decline. I think certainly deals are drying up. There's not a lot of investment, at least not net new investment. There's still some investment in existing core HR, but certainly not many customers are going out and purchasing a new on-premise core HR system. Some maybe decided to stick with what they've got for a while and let the clouds maybe mature a bit more. I've been seeing a lot more customers angling towards a rip and replace, or at least keeping SAP ERP because they have other processes running there, and then just basically switching their core HR over to SuccessFactors or other SaaS HCM systems, and then maybe just putting a mini master back into the old SAP HCM info types, so they can run their SAP payroll, CATs, and whatnot. So definitely seeing growth in core HR in the cloud for sure. Employee Central grew, I think, probably 100% year-on-year last year. Core HR is not really going anywhere at the moment. I think the earnings calls have showed that as well, that there's been quite some drop in revenue for the on-premise business.
Yep, I agree. I think for me, John, the biggest thing that's coming out as a theme is going to HR 2013 and HR 2014, the customers are more informed now. They are more aware. I mean, thanks to all the webinars and the writings that we do, they're more aware of the cloud as a core HRIS and migration to SuccessFactors Employee Central. So, I mean, it's quite timely that this morning I was actually with a customer where they started their SAP core HR implementation and they aborted it in the middle because they did not want to pay as much of licensing money for the on-premise software, and they're actually looking at SuccessFactors Employee Central. So there definitely is an increased interest towards the cloud. The challenge still is that there is not a very clear direction in terms of the deployment model that they want to use, and that is where partners like us come into the picture to guide them through the transition. So that's definitely something that is coming out, and also with side-by-side deployment model that we have, where customers can actually transition their core HR to Employee Central while still leveraging the on-premise SAP system. So that's going to be available as of now in August 2014, and we actually have a very big customer that's actually looking for that solution to come forward, and we implement it. So yeah, still a lot of mixed themes, but I think it's going to clear out a little bit more towards the end of the year.
I think Jody made such a good point there. Looking at the conferences over the last couple of years, so look at the HR 2012 conference. that was shortly after the acquisition. So pretty much nobody knew anything about SuccessFactors. We fast forward to 2013. It was quite heavy on the marketing side, shall we say. SAP were really kind of ramming the marketing message down people's throats. But then you fast forward a year, and they've really stepped back from that. I think they needed to put the marketing blast out there so people could begin to get an understanding about SuccessFactors. Get used to the name, get used to the cloud, get used to the idea of at least putting their talent processes into the cloud. And now that that kind of educational process has gone, the marketing has started to slow down quite a lot. I mean, you're as aware as I am that there's still a lot of marketing still taking place, but it's calmed down significantly, and it was a lot more educational. The latest HR conference was. It's mainly partners, but there was still quite a large selection of sessions run by SAP. They're mainly more just presentations and demos, rather than just full-on marketing. So it's kind of got from the high level down to a more lower level, where partners can come in now and they can go into the details because customers are beginning to understand kind of that much more deeper level of a deep level of recognition of what SuccessFactors is and what the suite's offering.
Yeah, and another point is that other than the hype, if for lack of a better word, about cloud, businesses are actually seeing that they actually have a business need to get to the cloud. And two, there are two themes that are coming out very clearly for me. One is the globalization, right? Globalization started years ago, but now what companies are finding is fine. They've globalized, they've expanded their their reach, but now they want those companies to converge. So the global needs to converge with the local into a core HRIS where they can access all the data and make informed decisions. And the other thing that I've seen is business no longer wants a solution that is mandated by IT. And that has been a huge driver with various customers where we increasingly see, the role of IT, and they still have a say in budget approvals, etc. But when it really comes to designing the system, when it really comes to the licensing and the subscription, business definitely has a bigger say, and they're seeing the benefit of it, because at the end of any implementation, their business unit users are such great champions that it paves the way for user adoption. So those are some of the things also very key, just kind of working in combination, so with the technology and the business coming together. That's what we see as well.
So, Jody, for some reason we're having some echoes with your sound. I'm not sure why. So if you can exit out of the Hangout, do a quick computer restart, come back in.
Okay.
And we'll save a place for you here.
Okay.
And we'll see if we can do a little better. So see you in a few.
Okay. Maybe I'll use my headphones when I come back in.
Yeah, if you have an internet landline, plug that in too, and we'll talk in a few.
Okay.
Okay. So Luke, sorry for our listeners there. We did a sound test right before we started, and everything was good, but such is life in the interwebs, as it were.
It's always how it goes.
Yeah. So Luke, let's carry on a little bit while Jody's rebooting. I'm picking up on a couple themes. One is just that it seems like when Cloud HR first started, it was really about kind of supplemental systems to the core, if you could say. Like there was a lot of talent management in the cloud, a bit of recruiting perhaps in the cloud. Now it really seems to me like it's more all in, where payroll is fair game, assuming the functionality is there for your requirements. So that's one thing I'm picking up on. Is that correct?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think at the point when SAP purchased SuccessFactors, Employee Central wasn't. I mean, it wasn't, to use a buzzword, it wasn't consumer grade, shall we say? It wasn't enterprise ready at the time. Some people described it more, ghostware really. It was just basically a nice UI but no substance. And I think it was back shortly after the acquisition, at the HR 2012. You know, the SAP HCM Insights guys, Steve Bogner and Jarrett and myself, had a chat with David, and he said, we know this. We know it's not ready, but we're going to invest heavily. And they stuck to that. They've invested a lot of time, money, effort, and developers onto developing core HR. So where it is now and where it was 18 months ago are very, very different places. And you're right. When it came on, it was more about it was a talent suite. That's what people were looking at what it was then called the BizX suite. They were looking at it as a talent suite that also had quite a strong analytics capability. So now we fast forward 18 months, 2 years, and we've now got a full cloud HCM suite. Employee Central's quarterly releases are pretty heavy. The upcoming one is not as heavy, which is kind of a sigh of relief really, because I know for Jody and myself it's been quite tough to keep up every quarter because there's so much coming in, and a lot of it's it's built on the metadata framework, so it's quite new, and trying to play and keep yourself educated on this functionality is quite tough when there's a lot of stuff coming through. So it has been quite a big transition that's enabled SuccessFactors to be in a position to offer a full cloud HR suite. I think the only real weakness is the payroll. I mean, we know Employee Central Payroll is just SAP on-premise payroll hosted in the cloud. I mean, we know it's one of the most robust, if not the most robust payroll engines in the world, but it's not a genuine SaaS product. It's not genuinely integrated. There are still some challenges in getting, Employee Central to speak to Employee Central Payroll. So I think for me that's probably the one area of weakness of the suite. Although the core engine is very strong, I do think kind of what surrounds it needs a bit more work. The Employee Central side, the info-type mashups and the payroll screens and the payroll slips quite good. But I just think that kind of connection would be a bit tricky, and I think I would like to see SAP invest in something more native and build something maybe from the ground up, a next generation payroll. Something, Holger Muller at Constellation did a great blog on what a 21st century SaaS payroll system could look like. And there's a lot of potential in what you could do if you built a payroll system from the ground up in the cloud and took advantage of the kind of payrolling, so some of the processing power, especially if you leveraged SAP HANA cloud platform. There's a lot of potential of sort of things you can do, reporting, modeling, all those kind of things that you don't have at the moment, and are going to be quite hard to bolt onto a payroll system that's 25, maybe more years old.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Luke, because I think in my eyes, the further you can get towards so-called true cloud, the better. And there's like these stages, right? Like hosted applications, and then multi-tenancy, and then subscription pricing, and then down the road, there's really rethinking processes and rewriting processes with the cloud in mind. And that's something we'll need to keep an eye on in terms of how far SAP takes that. Jody, welcome back to the Hangout. Hopefully we do better the second time around. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I hope so too.
Yeah, that sounds very clear. All right,
Okay.
Maybe we're going to do better now. So while you were out, we were talking a bit about just this transition where core HR functions are definitely more cloud ready as far as customers are concerned, not just talent and sort of edge HR. I wanted to ask both of you, before we dig into Employee Central, I just want to step back and just ask you about the cloud value proposition a little bit. Like, in your view, what is really dictating this trend towards more sort of customer HCM deployments? Where are they finding the value?
Okay, I'll start on that one. So I think the biggest value that they're finding is in usability and also supporting and maintaining the system. Usability, because so far the HR has been doing stuff, they've been doing all the administrative work. However, the employees and managers have always wanted to do it. Even with the SAP portal, it wasn't as user-friendly, it wasn't as intuitive as it is with the cloud. So that's definitely one of the unique selling propositions. And the second item that I said around maintaining and supporting the system, it's easier to maintain. Users have more control over it. They have to rely less upon implementation partners. So that helps them make quicker decisions and execute those decisions. So those are the two big things for me that I see as a unique selling proposition of the cloud. And of course, the user-based licensing cost. So a customer can actually control the cloud costs that they want to from a budget perspective.
Yeah, the whole capex versus opex makes quite a bit of a difference, and opens up kind of accessibility to enterprise software in kind of any area really. That's not just unique to HCM at all. Self-services always have been a big thing. The capabilities have been around for a while with the NetWeaver Enterprise portal, but I've always found that pretty clunky to use. While SuccessFactors brings a completely different user interface, different user experience, just a different design. I mean, I wouldn't quite agree that employees and managers want to do self-service, because I think if they could, they'd rather do less than more. But I think it's something. It's a necessary evil for them, and the usability of the cloud, whether it's performance management or whether they are doing, data maintenance or workflow approvals, vacation requests or whatever, definitely it's much easier and much more straightforward in SuccessFactors than it is in the NetWeaver Enterprise portal.
Yeah, I mean, well, the whole point about the ESS, MSS is that they're able to make informed decisions better. I mean, HR has been doing their work, the managers have been asking HR to do work, but now they're definitely seeing a paradigm shift when a manager is, say, giving a salary increase to an employee. They can see why they're giving that salary increase, right? They can see where these approvals are going. So in a very subtle manner, it's kind of training their mind and also helping them make better decisions. So, of course, that's a big value.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So let's dig into Employee Central specifically. Before we get into some of your experiences in the field, can we just take a step back and just for listeners who are not 100% clear on the different components that make up Employee Central, can you tell us what those are and which ones are most commonly used?
I'll let Luke go for it first.
Put the pressure on. Thought you were on a roll then as well.
Just balancing it out.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value from the components in Employee Central, especially some of the new stuff. I've seen time off being quite popular.
So can you kind of walk us through the different components just so we know what they are?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you've got your what we call on-premise or personal administration, personnel record keeping, address, work permits, marital status, all that kind of basic information that you have to give all your employees. There's the org management side of things, job information, compensation information. All that kind of stuff, which is kind of fundamental in every core HR system. That's in OMPA. I think it was probably in PeopleSoft and Oracle and the other competitive products. Workflows as well, quite typical transactions, workflows, and then we enter some of the things as I kind of skirted around to things like vacation management. Global benefits. Employee Central doesn't cover US benefits due to the complexity, but it covers global benefits, which is a new feature in February, and it's pretty rich in terms of functionality. One of the key things about this functionality, the last couple of things I mentioned, the global benefits and the time off, is that they were built on the metadata framework, so they're pretty flexible in terms of being extended. kind of beyond where they are and taking advantage of new MDF features like some of the globalization features for making a lot more country-specific kind of vacation request capabilities and benefits capabilities and those sort of things as well. So I think, go on. I've covered from a high level. I think Judge is dying for details here.
Yes, no, exactly. That was a very good 360 view. So if I may just take a step back, because just trying to draw an analogy for the SAP customers. You have info types where you're storing all the data. In Employee Central, consider them as different screens. So your employment information and your personal information are the two most important views, and take like 3 or 4 info types mashed up together into one section where you are storing information. So for example, in your job information, you can have what you store on info type 0, on info type 1. In personal information, you'll have what you store on info type 2. So what it does is it logically groups information, and honestly, it is more intuitive and more logical than we've seen on the SAP info types. So that's number one. The second thing it does is in terms of the language that's used on screen. So for example, if a manager is going to execute a transaction, you don't have to remember a transaction code. You literally just press a button that says take action, and all your options come up in front of you. So Employee Central, if you consider, it's basically made on the UI side, it's made of basically of personal information and employment information. Then there is this angle of different functionalities. So so you have a core base which any customer will deploy to get up and running, and then you have additional features, as Luke mentioned, time off. A customer may choose to implement it or not to implement it. You have global assignment. If you have a lot of global mobility, you implement it, else you may choose not to do it. So nothing is really mandatory for you other than setting up your enterprise structure and your personnel structure as we do in SAP. Some of what is really giving a lot of value to customers is, as SuccessFactors, as SAP are evolving the product, like a year ago, most of the configuration was done through XML data models, which is actually what sits behind the UI. And now the succession data model, where you have most of the employee-related information, can actually be configured on the UI. Luke mentioned workflow. I mean, he's the workflow guru of Employee Central. But that you can literally see workflows in front of you when you're adding approvers, you're changing the route, approval route chain and things like that. So that's kind of the soup to nuts of what Employee Central is made of.
I would think the UI-based configuration is going to be a pretty attractive feature, right?
Yes, it is. It is very attractive, because especially we've been with customers where they said, oh, we need this additional field, and we are waiting for 5 days for approval from IT so that a developer comes and relabels a field or hides it or makes it visible. And that's a matter of seconds. You can do it in a matter of seconds on Employee Central. So yes, very attractive.
And it actually raises an important point around IT's role and governance, which I think we could spend a whole another session talking about. Because I mean, it's a very valid point. That customers can be like, okay, I need to wait for IT approval, then we have to get someone to come in and do it. They have to do it, then we have to test, then we have to transport, then we have to test, then we have to transport, and then hopefully it works in production. This is quite a long period. The whole process can be very quick in Employee Central. A new field, you just go into the GUI, you can add it, it's there, you test. I mean, the team that actually wants to add the field and do the testing is the one that actually adds it. So you're removing a lot of the blockage out of the way. But on the other hand, without having the governance, the control of, say, IT, who are very used to doing that kind of thing, it can be easy for customers to get a bit carried away and start doing things which could be detrimental. So although, it's got this really strong and powerful capability, organizations need to ensure they actually manage this sort of thing quite well. IT still has a lot of role in the cloud. It might be different, but it still has a strong role, and this is one of those places where it still needs to play a role, but it doesn't need to have the same level of bureaucracy that you've typically had in an on-premise system.
Yeah.
So there's some danger in setting the user free on too much of their own configuration. There's still some issues that need a little guidance.
You make it that easy, and people are more likely to do it. And you want them to do it when there's a good business case and a good reason, but you also want them to do it right when they do it. And that's the issue, really.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like that's not just a case for IT's continued involvement. It sounds like that's also a case for an expert to be there who's got a lot of HCM experience, who can say, you might want to rethink adding this particular field because I've done this on several other projects, and here's the trouble you can run into, and here's a better way to handle it. That must be part of the process as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I was dying to make that point because yes, it's easy, but a couple of things. One is, and we can chat about it a little later, but the role-based permissions framework, which is analogous to security and authorizations and on-premise SAP, it does give you controls where you can control if somebody is allowed to add a new department or not, if somebody is allowed to add a new field or not. So there definitely is a certain level of control that can be exercised. But John, you bring up a very good point, the necessity of having an expert there. So configuration, fine, it's not a cakewalk, but it's not very, very complex. The skill lies in the expertise that we've been building through years of implementing core HR, because the vision that you have of the design for the customer can varies from customer to customer. And the beauty of Employee Central, according to me, and the reason I'm investing so much of time and energy in my life here is it gives you the building blocks, and it's flexible, it's agile, and you can build it the way you want to build it. But do you have the skill to build it or not? And that's where the role of partners comes, in the big picture, where people like us are playing a very crucial role in educating them.
But I think the model is different in the cloud. Customers shouldn't need to rely on partners in the cloud anymore, but I see that there still is a need for alliance in a different way. I mean, looking at quarterly releases, I mean that can be quite difficult to manage. And I think partners can play a role there in helping to advise customers, go through the releases, educate them on what's coming in, help with them getting on a path to get there. Because just because a feature comes out and you can switch it on like that doesn't mean you can actually use it straight away. There's often some setup, some change management, some of those kind of activities behind the scenes. So although in principle you shouldn't need a partner, and with this new upgrade center that SuccessFactors have, it's very easy for customers to just go in and switch on new features without a partner. There can still be a necessity to have a partner that's going to be able to advise you. And so, a partner's involvement typically has ended at go live. But as we know, go live isn't the end; it's often the beginning. But it should be a continued relationship. And it goes back to finding the right partner when you're starting an implementation project, because that partner is often going to be with you for a long time, because you're going to need that support and that advice, to keep up to date and to understand the impact of kind of all these quarterly releases. Eventually, customers, the IT teams and the business teams are going to be able to get a grip of it and understand it. But I think for the first, 4 to 6 releases, it's going to be quite tough for organizations to understand that. So that's a role where partners can play a big part. And I wrote a blog about it, I think, last year. I just call it the consulting as a service model, because I think consulting is going to change. And there's advantages for both customers and for partners there, but the reliance on partners is, I think, going to be much less post-go-live than it has been with on-premise software.
Yeah, and the other aspect to that is also, I can say 95% of the customers that I've worked over the past 2 years who are migrating to the cloud, and when they are doing core HR more than talent, they're actually going through a business transformation as well. So when they're going through a business transformation, they are revisiting, they are redesigning their processes, and they're actually using it. I mean, I've seen so many business process owners that they're using it as an opportunity to, to realign and to reconcile various processes. And they also, they look up to partners. So if partners don't have, their game on, then they're actually doing a big disservice. And that's something that I really want to say loud and clear, that you have to keep up and, step up your game.
That's a big trend, I think, actually, we overlooked at the start, is the number of customers that I know that Jody speaks to and that I speak to as well, that actually want to simplify their processes. They want to use the cloud as a way of getting their processes at a more simple level and a more standard level. And, the kind of organizations have worked out that a unique process doesn't necessarily give you an advantage. There's a lot of things that give you an advantage around your culture and the way that you do things, but maybe your hiring process or your leave of absence process is probably not one of those areas where you get a really unique competitive advantage by having a fairly complex process.
I like that you laid down the challenge, Jody, to consulting firms as well, because to me, Luke is spot on that consulting and expertise is still going to be needed, but the model's going to change a lot, and I think consulting firms are really going to have to rethink this notion of sort of milk the cow type of dependency of having a ton of consultants on site billing at a consistent rate year over year. It seems to me that customers more and more are going to want a path to autonomy, and the cloud kind of reinforces that by focusing on business expertise, but once that's transferred, then you're not needed as much. But you may be needed for upgrades and updates, and that's where Luke's point about the long-term advisor comes in, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the path to autonomy is, I mean, you couldn't have put it more beautifully. We actually have a customer where they want to do, we're creating a model which, for confidentiality purposes, I cannot say, but where customers are actually doing most of the configuration, and we are helping them do that. And that is where I would like to see customers going, because that's where they're, they will get maximum ROI from the cloud investment.
It's about empowerment, isn't it, really? It's about empowering the customer to help drive their implementation, because they're the ones who are going to be managing the system in the long term. Although they might need support from a partner, they want to be able to do it themselves. And I think the cloud can help with that kind of customer empowerment. And I wonder over the long term whether this is where the consulting market is going to go. That certain consultancies are going to realize that we have to spend more effort and take less revenue for actually empowering our customers to be able to configure parts of this system and get prepared to own the system while the implementation is actually ongoing, rather than this being something that they struggle with post go live.
Well, I think it's interesting because when you look at software as a service, the companies that have been most successful have been built from the ground up as SaaS companies, and you have to wonder about consulting firms as well. As you say, consulting as a service, are consulting firms that are built from the ground up with this model going to have an edge over, say, more larger firms that are household names that we could all mention now that aren't built that way? So anyway, that's a long topic, I think, for another hangout, but something for customers I hope to keep firmly in mind.
Yep.
Let's look at the actual implementation process a little bit. Can you guys walk me through the process of, okay, I went through an evaluation, I decided on SuccessFactors Employee Central. What does the implementation process look like from there? I selected my trusted consulting partner, and let's just say, for sake of imagination, it's you guys. What happens?
Well, they get excellent service.
Are there very distinct phases? Because obviously a lot of implementations have certain classic methodologies. Are those still in play? Like, how does it work?
Yes. There is definitely a classic methodology. It's not very different from the accelerated accelerated SAP methodology that we've been using, but it's more agile in terms of approach. It's more iterative. So 2 words: agile, project management, and configuration, and iterative approach. When we've got a customer, what we basically do is we go through, of course, the business requirements gathering phase, in which you are actually filling up configuration workbooks. Now, various partners approach it differently, and that is where a lot of the value as a partner comes into play. There is one approach where partners can hand over the workbooks, come back in 2 weeks and say, okay, give us the workbooks. And the other approach, which is a more value-added approach, is you actually partner with the customer. You sit with them, you do whiteboarding sessions, which is what we do at Horizons. And you take them through that entire process, at the end of which you have your requirements, and then you start configuring it for your first iteration. Now, unlike SAP, where customers would see a system only when they get to end-to-end testing or UAT, you're actually seeing the solution as it is being built. So that is your opportunity. Your first iteration is your opportunity to really validate that, oh, this is how it looks on screen. Okay, I made that decision, maybe that needs to change, things like that. And then as the iterations go, so as you go to iteration 2 and iteration 3, the number of changes, scope changes should ideally become less if you've done a good job upfront of doing business requirements gathering. And then, it goes to testing and then data migration and go live. The key difference where it becomes a cost-effective model for customers is that when you go in, a lot of the data migration, the testing, traditionally, according to the SuccessFactors methodology, it belongs to the customer, and you are just supporting as a partner. But there again, we see varied themes. When I'm working with an on-premise customer, they are high-touch customers, and they want you there. So as long as they can afford it for a consultant to be there on site, Monday to Thursday, doing 40 hours a week, good. But then there are customers who also like the on-site, off-site model. So it's just a delicate balance that varies with customers. I don't know, Luke, if you wanted to add something, but I don't think I left anything for you. Just kidding.
Sure, just a few scraps. Yeah, I think there's a lot of power in the iterative approach. As JT points out, by the time you've got to testing, there's not much to test. The customer already knows what the system does. They've already seen the system. They've seen their first set of config. They've seen it after their first and second sets of tweaks. So by that point, as JT said, they should be in a position where the system is ready. The customer is getting what they think they're getting is actually what they're getting. I've been on enough on-premise projects when we've got through the testing where the customer's, that's not how I expected it. Oh, that's not how I envisaged it. And because it's often been quite tough to translate, a theoretical system design to the customer. But with the cloud, the customer, because it's quite simple to configure, the customer can actually see it. They can see what the system looks like long before they get to the point of being able to sign it off. It's not just you said your requirements, game over. That's what you get. That kind of agile flexibility, I think, is what makes cloud implementations quite attractive to customers, and it makes them more of a success.
Right, and that's the one real appeal in my mind, of a more agile process is being able to make smaller course corrections instead of having that crisis 3 months in where you realize there's a huge gap in expectation.
And 15 change requests, and suddenly a project plan that's gone from here to here.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm just going to guess. I obviously have never implemented SuccessFactors, but I'm just going to make a guess that part of the super skill needed here is those early sessions, requirements gathering, managing expectations around what functionality is available within the system, what might be custom add-ons or extensions, what a customer might need to really give up, like Luke referred to, like a process that might not have competitive advantage. It's better to shift to a standard. What would that take? Those sounds to me like a lot of those discussions really need to be handled really well.
Yes, absolutely. You're spot on that, John. They have to. That's where the skill is needed, and if you haven't done that well, then you are not on the path to success. And often what we are seeing, we're talking about lessons from the ground. We are currently working at least with 2 customers that have Employee Central implemented by other partners who did not know what they were doing, who did not know how to guide the customer to a more comprehensive business process that will give them a progressive solution. That solution needs to see you through next 10, 15 years. And the reason is, I was actually on 3 scoping calls last week, and every scoping call, it became so clear that if the partners are not aware and if they are not on top of their game about the functionality, as Luke mentioned, I mean, it's rapid. The magnitude is just huge. They don't even propose that to the customers. And and the reason I'm being so vocal about it is because some of the panels that we did at HR 2014, I actually now have 3 customers who are evaluating us based on what we had suggested them as criteria to evaluate partners. So, of course, you put yourself in the line of fire, but that's the only way where you can distinguish between, the good from the bad. So, yeah, you're definitely very, very important.
Yeah, solid foundation is always important, whether it's been on-premise or with the cloud. And it is quite important if you want to be able to get through those iterations and have a happy customer. There's not much more to say than that. You've just got to set things up right from the start.
The one thing that I do always tell customers, though, is if you have key thing, a lot of customers don't see the value. You need to have a business analyst, an in-house business analyst who can actually keep an eye on the entire business and the processes. And you're better off if you've done one round of internal housekeeping, cleaning up your processes before you actually hire a partner and pay them consulting dollars for that. That's really something which will save you a lot of money, and that's just a message out to customers who are looking to migrate.
Well, and this calls attention to this classic consulting problem too, because one of the issues with on-premise SAP was that if a customer said in the beginning of the preparation, oh, I still want to keep doing this and that, and it wasn't available in the system, the consulting firm would say, sure, no problem, we'll take an expensive custom coding project on and build that for you. And there was no incentive to say no. But then the customer eventually wound up with technical debt and a system that was very difficult to upgrade and manage. So it seems to me that part of the new consulting, correct me if I'm wrong, is being able to be a little more firm with customers around, look, this isn't available in the system currently as functionality. Here's what it would take to build it. Here's the options, but we're going to encourage you to standardize this process, or what you would have to have some pretty honest conversations, right?
Yes, you have to have honest conversations, but there's another aspect to it. The aspect is that oftentimes, Luke and I have been on a few situations like that where the customer's told, oh, the product cannot do it. However, the product can do it if you really have the skill to do a workaround solution. It may not be a standard delivered functionality, but with the metadata framework and the extensibility that the product comes with, and Luke can chime in a little bit more on that because he's actually done it with a customer that we are getting live shortly, you can build a solution. So yes, you have to be firm, but you can be firm only if you know what you're doing, right? Luke, I don't know if you wanted to add something to that.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be prepared to say no. And that's quite tough for consultants that are used to the SAP HCM, where there's always a way to write a custom program, write a user exit, write a baddie, throw a load of consulting dollars at it, and you can get a solution to anything, which is expensive, difficult to maintain. So you have to be able to have the ability to say no when there's not a possibility there. But Jody makes a good point about again, problem solving is quite a skill that you really need, I think, because sometimes the solution is not so obvious unless you've got a solid understanding of the system, of the customer's requirements, and then be able to actually brainstorm solutions in your head. And of course, those coming from an on-premise background might not always have to have done it that deeply, because it's always easy to fall back on a bit of coding in order to find the solution. But there are more challenges with the cloud, and extensibility plays a massive part in making that easier. metadata framework, something, recurring theme that keeps coming up, but it's an extremely powerful part of SuccessFactors. And the Employee Central extension package on the HANA Cloud platform, which I know, John, you and the famous Wombling Chris Payne had a good chat about a couple of months ago.
Yeah, I would refer viewers and listeners back to that conversation for more about the approach I advocate, which is building applications on the cloud as opposed to customizing the code base. But that's a whole nother discussion. So before we wrap up, we're getting towards the end of our discussion. Can we just kind of go through other do's and don'ts? You guys have now seen multiple projects, talked to multiple customers. Give us some rundowns of other do's and don'ts for successful cloud HCM projects.
I can start with that. So the do's and don'ts, definitely have your processes ironed out, number one. Number two, if you have varied external systems that you are looking to consolidate, try not to do it in one big bang. Get up and running, prioritize your data integration points, prioritize what you really need when you start off the project. Number three, data migration is a little bit of a struggle, to put it like that. We do need a better data conversion tool for SuccessFactors, in my personal opinion. So start that process early on in the project, because you do not want to have your system ready and now you're stuck in getting delayed because you cannot get your data extracted. In terms of your reporting and analytics needs, please, well, this goes for any implementation, but more so for when you're doing a cloud implementation, because you have so much flexibility to store and not store data that you want. So start up front with your reporting analytics needs and your testing scenarios. That's from my side, some of the key ones.
Yeah, I would say, stepping back a little bit is I would say customers, do consider putting an Employee Central before you look at some of the other SuccessFactors talent modules, so you've got a robust foundation there. Because, integrating all that talent back into a core HR system with different data structures and processes, it can be a little tricky. And if you're going to eventually go with Employee Central anyway, it doesn't make sense that you go talent and then you go core HR, because that's not how people have done it in the past. And I know you should always stick to what you've done in the past, but having a robust core HR platform before you go to talent, I think is a sound move. I would say customers do look at rip and replace. Do look at moving your core HR entirely into the cloud, or at least maybe to a side-by-side model, but I always advocate going completely to the cloud. And one thing I would say is, even before you get to the cloud, just take a step back. I think, customers, particularly those used to SAP, often look at HR as in we have core HR, we have talent, we have analytics, then we have mobile. I think customers need to kind of put it all together and have a look a more holistic view at human capital management. I think they need to customers need to identify what their vision is for HR. What are they actually trying to get out of what they're doing? Well, how do they want human capital management to look at the organization? How, where do they want to be as an organization in terms of talent? And I think that has a big impact on how you approach the clouds. And I think customers, if they can sit down and they can build that cloud strategy and have that vision in place, I think they're going to have a really fruitful journey into the cloud.
Yep.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So you've made, I think, a pretty effective business case for SuccessFactors and Employee Central. If you mentioned one thing you think should be improved, which is the data conversion tool. If you each could pick one other thing that you think SAP should enhance or improve in SuccessFactors, it could be the product, it could be the support, the services, whatever it is. What would be the one thing you would like to see from SAP?
For me, it's SAP has a very slick transport mechanism when you come to on-premise implementations. You do not have that in SuccessFactors. They are building it out. You do have configuration settings that can be moved from one instance to the other, but I think it's not there where it needs to be, and that will really shorten the implementation timelines, and it will also add a lot of value to the customer experience.
I think for me, I try to think of something I know that's not coming soon, because a lot of things I thought they could do, which I know are coming, you know, like performance of having the suite running on HANA. Contingent workforce management has always been a bugbear of many of my customers, and that's something that's coming. That's something which Fieldglass is going to have an influence on. That's something I would like to see coming. I know it's coming soon, so it's a bit of a cop-out answer, but it's something I think HR has always struggled to have a real solution for managing contingent workforces, and I think I'd really like to see Employee Central manage that in a way that makes sense to businesses, not just pushing you know, like contractors into employees and just say we'll give them a separate tag, but actually managing that part of the workforce in a contingent context and not just in an employee context, because they kind of, there is an overlap, but certainly contractors, they're not the same, and there are differences, and I'd really like to see how Employee Central can manage that in a way that suits how businesses work with contingents these days.
All right, so SAP don't mess about with the Fieldglass acquisition then.
Yeah.
That's a good message.
Can I actually add one more thing, John? I know you asked me to pick one, but this is very important.
You can have two. You can have two.
Okay, because customers are asking for this. There are a lot of customers who are not in the know, you know, until they go to these conferences or they see things like what we are doing right now, and they need some assistance from SAP for partner evaluation. You know, every partner's out there touting, oh, we have certified consultants, we have experience, blah, blah, blah. But I think, yeah, exactly. But I think that SAP, as an onerous company that they are, they owe it to the customers to have some level of influence when customers are doing partner evaluation. So.
Right, which opens up an interesting discussion about consulting firm ratings and consultant ratings, and that's yet another hangout, so we're not going to be able to dig into that today.
Yeah.
I think we have time for one more, so I'd like to just kind of take a look at, I promised listeners that we would return to this topic of these major news announcements. We had Vishal Sikka's sudden exit from SAP, which obviously raised a lot of questions, though I would argue it's going to impact SuccessFactors less than most areas of SAP, aside from the HANA Cloud Platform piece, maybe. But then we have also a high-profile HCM-related departure with the news that Sean Price is leaving SAP as well. So when we take those things together and then look ahead at ASUG Sapphire, which is coming up in a little less than a month now, what are you going to be looking for from SAP? What kind of communication around these changes are you going to be looking for at Sapphire? Or what are your thoughts just in general about this?
Well, you're right. I don't think Vishal's departure has too much of a direct impact in HR. Of course, HANA Cloud Platform, but I think Vishal's built such a solid foundation for HANA that I think that's probably going to continue as planned. And, you know, the succession planning was well executed. They've got some good people that have come in. Of course, Vishal's a very, very tough person to replace. But I think that they've definitely done some pretty good appointments in place. I'm not going to touch too much on that because I know you and John Appleby had a great conversation about that. I listened to it earlier today, and I would recommend others to have a listen to that. It's a good in-depth conversation. I know you two guys both spoke to Bill McDermott about it earlier in the week, so I won't touch on that anymore. In terms of Sean, I've spoken to Sean a few times recently. He's a pretty good guy who helped kind of with some of the transformation of SuccessFactors into the SAP family. It's becoming more and more assimilated into SAP. I think that's becoming less and less of a secret. I think Sean did a good job of kind of bringing the old world of on-premise and the new world of cloud together. kind of in hindsight, kind of think, well, maybe this is on the cards because, Mike Etling came in to do that once Sean had kind of stepped up. Mike's got a lot of experience on both sides, and I think he's going to do a really great job replacing that aspect of Sean's role. But it seems that there's a change of tact in the direction. Before, I think, with Sean, they wanted cloud to be its kind of own place, its own division within SAP, and I think they've now decided that they don't want that. They want it to be like maybe more line of business application based. So now they have on-premise HR and cloud HR run together instead of being SAP Cloud over here and having HR over here with SuccessFactors and then on-premise over here. They've kind of brought that together, and I think the aim is to do that in all the different streams that previously were kind of under Sean and then maybe under some other folks, depending on what it was. So I think it's got more of an impact on SAP's overall cloud strategy and cloud business than it has on HR, because I think, they'd already got Mike Etling in place, and, he's already done a lot of interviews, done a lot of good things, and it's clearly shown that he knows what he's talking about when it comes to HCM, both on-premise and cloud. So I think, from our perspective, we're kind of quite covered by that. I don't think there's going to be too much of an impact, but it'd be interesting to see what the impact is on the rest of SAP's cloud businesses and how they start bringing all those other areas together.
Yeah, I think, John, from my side, it is, it's a market-driven business decision that SAP has taken as an organization. I've been watching the market, and I think they're progressively making, you need these steps to make yourself relevant with however the competition in the market is driving. The only message that I want to hear from SAP is that it should not impact the product direction, it should not impact the commitment that they've given to the customers. So as long as that's intact, I think we are quite agile to move around as we have to accommodate with the latest changes.
Yeah, and just a quick chime in, I think you guys pretty much nailed it. And Luke, I agree with you that there seems to be a different sort of philosophical sort of decision around, or organizational around, dividing cloud and no longer kind of dividing cloud and on-premise. That's what I read between the tea leaves as well. So that will be a very interesting thing to follow at ASUG Sapphire, because I think we'll hear a lot of positioning around that and find out if that makes sense to customers or not. We could have a long debate about that as well, but we're not going to because we're almost out of time. Tell us where you guys are going to be. What shows can people find you at? You're both going to be at ASUG Sapphire, right? What else is going on?
So we are at ASUG Sapphire, where we are doing our a panel with Joachim Fodrer, who's Employee Central Product Management. Both of us are going to be at Nice. I'll let Luke talk about his sessions. I am on 2 expert panels and doing 2 sessions. One of my sessions is on implementing and Employee Central and challenges and lessons learned. And I'm also doing another session where I'm actually doing a comparison of SAP on-premise, basic enterprise objects, and how things have changed and how your life will change when you're implementing Employee Central. So yes, find me there at Nice, and would love to have a wine or something, or beer, whatever.
Yeah, so HR 2014 Europe is in Nice in a couple of weeks' time. So as usual, I'm going to be moderating Employee Central Experts panel with Jody and with Joachim from SAP. He's Thomas Otter's right-hand man in Employee Central Product Management. And again, as usual, I'll be on the Future of SAP HCM panel, which Steve Bogner normally does in the US and Martin Gillette is doing in Europe. Jody will also be joining us this year. That's always quite a good session. It's always pretty well attended, and often a few good insights come out. So that's where we'll be for the next month, and then we have a bit of a break until back in Vegas, baby, for the Success Connect conference at the start of September.
Indeed. Okay. Well, I wish we could talk more, but I think we've covered enough for today. Thanks so much. I had a lot of fun learning about this with you guys, and hope listeners enjoyed.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Take care.
Yeah, thanks, John. I enjoyed it, and I look forward to catching up with you in Orlando at Sapphire.
Here we go. See you guys soon.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.